Welcome everyone. Today we're gonna look at the TouchDesigner project and see how we can improve it. By improving it, I'm not saying about giving it better effects. I'm talking keeping this exact same output, but having better performances, a better hierarchy inside of it, and to make it easier to understand and to improve in the future. So when you're working on a TouchDesigner project, one of the things I find is the most important thing is for everything to be clear, to be organized, and to have consistency all across your project. By consistency, I talk about having a naming scheme, having naming conventions, color conventions. When you're doing the same thing, it's kind of important to do it the same way every time. When someone's reading your TouchDesigner project and every time you're doing the same thing, you're doing it in a different way, it's going to make it more complicated to read, to maintain, and to work with in general. So for this project, we're going to have a quick look at how it is organized and what we can do to it to make it more organized and more efficient. So the first level of the project, the root. So at the root of the project, there's nothing more than what you're given in a new project. There's a small error here we're gonna remove. Okay, so that's great. Everything's happening in the project one. So let's look at it. Here we have simple hierarchy. There's a folder dat here, which is giving us all the files we're going to use. So this project is a VJing project. His purpose is to take videos, inputs, apply effects on them and output it. Ideally, everything has to be fast and efficient because it's going to be played in real time in live shows accompanied by music and everything else. So your project has to be efficient, it has to be robust, it has to be easy to use, and if something happens or you want to edit something on it, you have to be able to do it quickly and efficiently. So we're gonna take a look at see if this project is actually doing that, and we're gonna edit it to fix everything that may need to be fixed. So here we have our input for the videos. Looks like all the effects are applied inside this space. We're going to look at it in a bit. Here we have a null for output, which is great. Here we have a movie file out for our recording, probably. And here we have a window for displaying our output, I guess. So I think this window is maybe doing the same job as the perform window on the root, but we'll see that later. So this project is controlled with a Nano Control 2, which is a small MIDI controller made by Korg. So I have it on my desk so I can interact with it and see how it edits all the effects and adjust them. And when you look at all the channels coming out of the mapping of the MIDI controllers, all the channels are named according to what they are on the controller. The knobs are named knob, the slider, and the buttons based on their position on the controller. This is good in a way, in a sense, as with this kind of naming scheme, you're able to see rapidly what you have to do in the real world to adjust a channel. Like I want to adjust slider 4, I know which one it is, I just have to move it. Okay, but when you're actually building the project, it poses some problems as like I want to edit, I don't know which effects, and adjust one of its parameters. I have absolutely no idea which button I have to move because I don't know which slider is related to which effect or properties. And in a sense, I'm not a really big fan of this kind of naming. Like in the beginning, I get it because here you're just getting default names from TouchDesigner, and like knob 7 is way more explicit than CH16, CTRL22, of course. But even though this kind of naming scheme is great for knowing what kind of information our controller is giving us, it doesn't help us at all to know what these informations are doing inside our project. So what we will want to do is rename these channels to what they are doing, what they represent for us in this project. So we're going to see this a bit later. So here we have the main base where everything's happening. So we're going to take a look inside. Okay, so there's a lot of background tabs, which is clustering our vision and our workspace. So what I like to do is just to go in the display properties of the network editor, hide the background tabs, split our screen in two, and have the background tabs be displayed on the top viewer. So here it is. So there's two top displays. We're gonna hide them like that. We're gonna just okay. Now we can see a bit better what's happening. Okay, so looks like we have our inputs on the left. We have our effect here in a nice fashion way. And here we have our outputs. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Here we have a parameter chop, which is taking the parameter of the parent base. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so it looks like all the effects and the properties are referenced here. And here, if you look at them, you can see that they are directly using the MIDI channels we just mapped and renamed before. Okay. So before going into the effects, because I believe all the effects are directly taking their information from this. So we'll start by renaming the channels we have information about here to match more of what they are doing. So we are in our project. So here it is our output. This is a first mapping. We're gonna keep it for now because having to rename, like, I don't know, top 4 to mirror is easier than having to whatever top 4 was named before to mirror. So here we're gonna go select. So with this select, we're gonna get only the channels we want in order to not carry with us unused channels that are just cluttering our chops and taking resources to be transferred all around in our project, even though we're not using them. So I'm taking the output from this, and I'm gonna start with the knobs, for example. Okay, so how many knobs are being used? There's a second one, there's a fifth one, and then the sixth one. Okay, so we're gonna select just those 3, 1, knob 2, knob 5, knob 6, and we're gonna rename them. So to rename them directly in the select, we put the same name and we add their new name right under it. So knob 2 is the ghost sample step. So I like to rename them using only caps and underscores in order to make them different from the default channel generated by TD. Okay, so our first 3 channels are renamed. We're going to do the same for all the following ones. So it's always the same things. Because the channels were at the start separated and renamed based on what they are in real life, knobs, sliders, buttons, I'm gonna keep this separation for the different renaming for now, and we'll improve this later if needed. So I think I've renamed all of them, so I'm now gonna update the references between the new named channels and the parameters of the base. So I'm gonna intentionally not rename 2 of those channels, which are already correctly renamed, I guess, and so that's the prev and next channel. I'm just gonna put them in caps for the sake of consistency. Okay, so here we have all the channels in different selects, so it's easier to rename them independently. I'm merging them all at the end and everything here in the same mapped chop. Okay, so here we're gonna update the references. Let's go. So all our parameters have been referenced to the newly named channels, so everything's a bit more clear. And now when I know, like if I move a slider, it adjusts the ghost strip and I see it being adjusted and I know what I'm acting on. This may seem a bit counterintuitive because we lost the fact that it was written slider 2 and we just have to move the second slider, but I'm more in favor of having visual clues on the controller directly, such as lights if they have it, or like stickers on them, I don't know. To know what each slider is doing instead of having to carry out the name of the controller with us through the project. Another thing about doing this is that if tomorrow you're changing your controller, you don't have to do all your mapping again throughout your project. You just have to rename channels on your new controller to the effect's name and they will work the same way. So it's a nice way of having the possibility to switch from one controller to the other without having to change everything in your project just to have it work again. So that's one thing. Okay, so we rename our channels, so now it's more easier to understand. Now we're gonna take a look at what's happening with the effects. So we have this parameter job here that has all the parameters we've referenced before. If we have the dat in that gets the name of the folders, the files in our folder, and we have this source that I believe is the one selecting the video. So here in this constant we have an increment and a decrement, so I believe we have the prev and next button reference here. Okay, so this way we can change the video. So everything's happening here and it's getting inside this. So let's take a look. Okay, so what's happening here is that we're taking the two inputs from the next and prev button. We're adding them here so it can act as a trigger for a count job. And under here with this one, we're inversing it. So this way, in this one, we're gonna increment or decrement the values in count. So if I click next, it increments it. If I click prev, it decrements it. So that, I don't think there's any better way of doing this action. The only thing I can do here is just clean it up a little. So at the end, we get the source index channel here, which equals to the index of the videos we want to use. So the 9th, 10th, etc. So I'm just gonna rename this now to have a more explicit name. So I'm gonna name it the same way as the channel in order to make it easier to use and to have it be explicit. So source index, perfect. So everything's broken now, of course. So we just have to redo our references, just like that. Okay, so what's happening here? We get the table, we get informations about the table, which is used as a limit for our counter, great. The info is copying all the values, even though we're using only one, which is the number of rows, so we're gonna copy it to this, okay, perfect. And I'm gonna dock it to this one. It is just additional information and we don't need it in the global flow of what's happening. So dock to here. So perfect. Now we got the in, we got this renamed. Here we got the current source, yes, which is selected using our source index values. And here we have this. Okay, so here we get only the name of the source, while here we get the complete path to the source. Great. And here we have a final select. Okay, so we are able to collapse those two select together. That's going to be one less node, because here we select all the rows and only the second column, and here we select a specific rows and all columns. So we're going to add the column parameters from here in this one. So here it's doing by index and only selecting the first one, so by index this way, and we're just going to remove this and same result, one less node. Wonderful. So here we have the name of our video, here we have the path to our video, and here we have the text that was displayed on the base display, and here we have a movie file in which use this file path as an input. So this is causing some problems, like when you switch through a lot of videos, you're getting some FPS drops because TouchDesigner has to do a lot of disk reads, and that's not efficient. So we're gonna leave this like that for now, and we're gonna take a look at it later and see how we can improve this so we can seamlessly switch between videos without having those drops. Okay, so here we have a null and we have an out. We're gonna remove the null because it's doing the same thing as the out basically. And here we're done. Okay. So I think this is good. I'm just gonna clean it up a little and we go to something else. Okay. And one thing is to hide all the viewers, because even though that's just small little displays, they're still using performances when they're displayed on the screen, and all the node keeps all the usability even if it's hidden. So perfect. Just a quick save and let's continue. Here we have a null that's just for our video. Okay, and here we have the effects. So there's two lines of effects, but they're all in series, so we're just gonna move them side by side so it's more explicit. First effect is a strobe effect, so let's take a look. So okay, not a lot of things to see, but we may have a lot of opportunity to improve things. Okay, so we have a constant here which is name of. Okay, I don't know what's adjusting it. I'm gonna take a look if I move some things in the MIDI. Not so much actually, so I don't know what's the use of this. This switch, oh okay, this switch is using the parent.effects.parameter.strobe, which mean the strobe effects were, okay, so parameters, strobe effect, it was the strobe right here. Okay, so when I press the button, it just switched between 1 and 0. Yes, so it switched between this who outputs 0 and this one who is an LFO. Do I have the hand on this LFO? No, there's no parameters on this one, so I'm just gonna keep it like that, hide it. The off is right there. We're gonna rename it default. And here is a source LFO. We're gonna put this here. Okay, when I press the button and it turns on, this node uses like almost no cooking time, so we're going to keep it this way. That's great. We have a rename here because the channel produced by your LFO is named chan1 while our default channel is named off. So when we switch, we need this rename here to be sure that when we're doing the reference from this level, the channel is always named the same. So at the beginning, setting the same name for the two channels will remove the use for this rename, which, if you look, doesn't use a lot of resources, but it's still more than a simple switch, and it's still resources and they can add up. So we want the channel to be named strobe, so we're going to go into the channel tab of the LFO, rename it from chan1 to strobe, and do the same thing in this constant and rename it strobe as well. So now we can remove this rename, and even though I'm activating or deactivating the effect, the channel keeps the same name and the reference is working. So that's one less node right here. Okay, this node represents the strobe amplitude, I believe. So I'm still gonna rename the node from null to strobe amp to signify what it means, and I'm just gonna repair the reference. Just gonna take a look if there's no, okay, simple reference, wonderful. So here it is doing the same. So here we have our input. We have a first level that just adjusts the black level, okay. We have a chroma that looks to be removing the background, okay. We have a level here that adds this strobe effect, and we have this matte that replace everything. Okay, so, and we're using the alpha from what we've done, so it only applies here. Okay, so, but shouldn't be taking too much memory and is quite efficient. To get this information, you just have to do a right click info on your node. You can also do an alt right click on the node, or if you have a mouse with a wheel, you just have to do a wheel click on the node and you get the information. These paints are really useful as they tell you how long the node took to cook on the CPU, how long it took to cook on the GPU, and we have the average time on the right. And this is the relevant information here, because we see that this node is using 0.08 milliseconds to cook, which is not a lot. But if you want to achieve 60 frames per second, all the time used by all the nodes in your project should never be higher than 16.6 milliseconds. It's kind of a magic number. If you go above that, you're going to start losing FPS. If you are below that, it's good. So here it's just 0.07 plus 0.046. So it's not a lot, but it's already more than 0.1, and they can add up really fast. So that's why we have to look at them really seriously. So I'm gonna hide the viewers, so that's good. So here we have our level, the matte. Here we have a constant, which is black, and we go here to have a background on it. Okay, so so what I don't like here is that this constant here has the exact same size as the video, and there's no need for this constant to be the same size. Because it's a constant, we can have it be only 1 pixel by 1 pixel. And in our composite over here, I'm gonna inverse them. I'm gonna say that in the transform tab, my fixed layer is the first one, which is the video. And the preset overlay will be native resolution, so there's no scaling going on, and extend overlay is repeat. So because this pixel is exclusively black, it will be black repetition all over, and I'm just gonna inverse the operation order, and we get the same effect with a smaller constant, and so less pixels being moved around. So this composite is just in the good speed for what a composite usually takes. Okay, and finally a null, an out. We're gonna remove the null, keep only the out, and okay, we're good. And this field for the display, which is quite a nice thing actually, so we're gonna keep it, of course. Okay, just putting it back at the centers, and we're gonna take a look at the second effect. So here we have the second effect, which is a ghost effect. So we're gonna see what it does. So the ghost effect, okay, so we have another constant here. So we're gonna start by doing the same operation as we did before, which is to resize the constant to exactly 1 pixel and have the composite do native resolution and the repeat. And we're gonna use the first input as a reference, and we get the same effect as before, but we have a smaller size constant top. Okay. So this composite is used as a reference for this feedback that goes in a level. Okay, this level has a 0.99 opacity to make sure everything's getting disappeared because it's looping. Okay, so we're gonna just put them back here. This is working quite nice. Okay, so there's a few things at the end. Okay, so here we go, getting a constant, which is the ghost parameters from our custom parameters in our base. So I can turn it on or off, and it just do a cross using the switch. Okay, so after that we get a blur. Oopsie. You get a blur, which is influenced by the ghost sample, which is this fader, and I can adjust this. Okay, the math here is doing a range. It's going from 0.1 to 0.10. So instead of multiplying the value, I'm going to use the range properties of the math and do a 0.10. It does the same thing, the same output, but I believe this is more explicit, as you know exactly what is your intent with this node. Here our intent is not to multiply the previous value, is to have it go from a 0.1 range to a 0.10, and that's what is being explained here. So we're gonna do it like that. We're gonna just put them on the line so we don't have links going everywhere. Okay, so that's one effect. Corrected, we're gonna realign them. Same thing here, there's a null before and out, so we're gonna remove it. Here we have our effect, we're gonna align this on top of it. Wonderful. So same thing here, we just have the field, here we have a constant, and as well, same thing as before, here I have a constant, I have absolutely no idea what this constant mean, so I'm gonna rename it based on what it sees. So that's a ghost effect, which is some kind of toggle, so I'm gonna rename it like ghost toggle. Here it is, so the channel is renamed, so the switch is broken. Here we're gonna rename it with the same name as well for the sake of consistency. And we're gonna do this here, and instead of having 2 times the same text, I'm just gonna type 0 here to select the first channel in this node, because we have a very specific naming for this node, so it's not gonna hold another channel. So we know by saying a 0 we're selecting the first channel, and if tomorrow we want to rename this channel to not ghost toggle but anything else, as long as we keep the name of the chop intact, this will still be working. Okay, so following up, here we're gonna do the same. So now we're getting the ghost sample value, and it's working again, and it's doing what we believe. Yes, I can change the sample like that, and the slide. So I guess for now we're done with this effect. We have done everything we could to have it more organized and to remove unnecessary nodes and have them a bit more explicit. So I'm gonna hide all the viewers, and we're gonna take a look at the following effect, which is RGB delay. The RGB delay is a really common effect, so we kind of see it everywhere, and everyone has its own way of doing it. So we're gonna see how it's done here and if we can improve it a bit, because there's like a lot of things happening here. We have a monochrome here that takes luminance alpha. This one is doing the same thing, and this one is doing the same thing. So those 3 nodes, they're doing the same thing, though we're still having it 3 times. And what's happening? Okay, so there's more reference going on. Okay, so we're doing a cross. Okay, so that's just to enable or disable the effect. So we're gonna take a look at this a bit after. So because of 3 monochrome are doing the same thing, I'm just gonna remove 2 of them and replace those links with links coming from the first one. Okay, great. So looks like I have a few constants. So I have warnings because I don't have a TouchDesigner commercial license on this computer, because it's not the computer I'm using when I'm doing live events. So there's those warnings, but we're just gonna ignore them for now, as we cannot do a lot about them anyway. So here in this constant, I get the contrast value. This value is not used. I'm just gonna remove it, and everything is still working perfectly. So that's nice. We have removed something more. Okay, so like here we have 3 comp that just color what we are doing. So we're gonna take a look at the path of the video for one of the colors. So we're gonna start with the red. So first we take our monochrome image and we turn it into a fully red image where there were lights. With this level we do nothing actually. So I'm just gonna remove it. Oh yeah, closing the search. Next I have this chroma, which is doing a lot of things, so we're gonna keep it. I have a cache here that I have 5 frame latency. So okay, just checking if the others have the same latency. So that's a 1 frame latency, that's a 2 frame latency, so they do different things, so we're gonna keep it. We have this transform here, translate on the right, 7 on the right, 7 pixels on the right. This one is doing 7 pixels to the bottom, and this one to the right bottom. Okay, so that's how we get our displacement effect. And the luma blur here, that just applies a small blur to the effect. A few things here. The first is the chroma we're doing here seems to be the same on every every line, and same thing for the level, it does nothing, so we're going to remove it as well, and the third one will be removed as well for the close with search. So we have already removed a few nodes. All the comp just do is color the monochrome image, then we have the same chroma on all of them that does the same operation, and we're caching all this information after it, and finally we're transforming it based on a cache. So what I think is that this comp can be put after, and the chroma, the cache, and does the luma blur have the same effect? Yeah, all the luma blur are the same, so I believe this can be unique, and only those two nodes need to be specific for each color of the video. So we're gonna build a fourth path which is gonna replace the 3-1 we have here. So the first thing is the chroma, so I'm gonna copy paste it here and replace it with our input, which gives us the same output just in white and not colored. Then the cache information, which goes right there. And finally the luma blur, which has the same parameters for all channel, will do the same thing around here, so every frame is already blurred. Okay, so now that we have this, we're gonna even put the cache before it. After the cache, there is 3 different frames needed from the cache. There is the -5 there's a -1, and there's a -2. So what I'm gonna do is this one is gonna output the red with a -1, just like we're doing, and because we are not going before 5 frames in the past, we're just gonna limit the cache size to 5, so we don't use any memory that we don't need. Just look at this for the example. The GPU memory used by this top is 28.13 megabytes, and when we were at 32 like this one, we were using 154 megabytes. So that's a reduction of more than 2/3, which is really good. So now that we have that, we're gonna separate it into each channel, and this comp is doing an add. We're gonna try to do this with a reorder to see if it's possible. So we're gonna start by the red. So the red will take a reorder right there, and we're gonna select exclusively the red channel, keeping the alpha unchanged, and I'm just gonna apply the transform on it. I'm even wondering if I can work with the channel mask from here. Let's see. Yes, it does work, so there's not even a need for this reorder. So here we have a transform on the red channel, so I'm gonna rename it red transform. I'm gonna take the transforms on the grid channel, put it there, bam, adjust the mask so it's only working with the green channel, and rename it green transform. And finally I'm gonna take the transform from the blue channel and do the same thing right here with a mask working exclusively on the blue channel. So we're gonna have to do a reorder anyway, but that's not a problem. So here we add a reorder. So the reorder allows us to take specific channels from an input top, multiple input top, and create a new output using the inputs we want. We want for the red channel to have 5 frame latency, for the green channel 1 frame latency. So I'm gonna extract more images from this cache. So I'm gonna add cache select right there, which is gonna reference this. It's gonna go right there. So this cache select is gonna select the -1, which is the green one we want. We're gonna put it there, and we're gonna select the second input for the green channel. Okay, wonderful. And finally, we're gonna use a third cache select. It's for the blue channel, and we want this channel to have a 2 frame latency. So we're gonna set 2 right here, and we're gonna add it as the third input and say we want the alpha from the blue from the third input. So we have something very similar from this. So we're gonna remove everything that's not needed. So now we have this comp that is getting back the colors by doing an over, so we're gonna put it right there. And we have this cross here that acts as an activate, deactivate element, but I'm gonna try and see if inverting them is actually doing any significant difference. So here I get the base, and if I do it, I get this RGBD. I'm gonna change the visual to get a better example. Okay, so this one seems good. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So we get this nice RGB delay with a nice fade because we're using a cross here. Okay, so here we have a scale that just appears after it. So anyway, even this, the RGB is deactivated, we still have this scale, and I don't think that's the intent here, as if the RGB delay is deactivated, I don't want it to scale. So I'm gonna put this cross after it. And when talking about consistency, here we are handling the activation or deactivation of the effect using a cross stop. But if we look back at the previous effect we worked on, which is the ghost effect, we used a switch to activate or deactivate the effect. What we're going to do is we're going to replace the other one with a switch, as I found them more explicit than a cross for this kind of task. So this cross, we're gonna copy the channel used and do a right click, change top to a switch right there, and we're gonna put back the reference. Be sure to click on blend between inputs, just like that. Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, I think we're good for the RGB delay. That's the first one I've seen it done like this, but I think it's a really nice way of doing it. And we've been able to reduce it by a significant amount of nodes. We're gonna hide the viewers, and we're gonna see how long for this takes to cook. So 1 point, I don't know, like 3, 4, and 0.6. So that's 2 milliseconds used by this node. This one was using less than 1 millisecond. This one is using something like 1 millisecond. So we're like 1 to plus to 4. So that's nice because we're only using 4, which is a quarter of what we are allowed. So let's go to the next effect, which is a mirror effect. Okay, so what's happening here? We have our input right here, we have an LFO here on which we have no control, and we have a null here for the output of this LFO, and the LFO is working on the pivot point of the mirror. So, oh, okay, so that wasn't the pivot at all, that was the rotation, of course. So it's a mirror angle, and we're gonna rename it here. Okay, so this is broken. I'm just gonna rename it, select the first channel because it's a specific null, and we are good. And I'm also gonna put it next to it. Okay, so here we have another value, which is another LFO. Is it the same as this one? Let me see. No, so we keep them separated. So this one is being used here as a pivot and here as a pivot. So this is our mirror pivot. So mirror pivot. Okay, so not here. Here it's just for the channels. We're gonna rename the null because it's a specific one. Okay, and we're gonna fix this by renaming the operator with select and putting it back to 0. So we have a first crop here that only selects the bottom part, and this one only selects the same thing. Here we have a transform that does a 45-degree rotation, no translation, and it just adjusts its pivot, so this rotation makes it look like it's just moving while doing it, and is extended with a mirror effect. Here we're doing a flip from top to bottom, and here we're doing the 45 degrees rotation. This is a minus 45-degree rotation. And here we are layouting them from top to bottom. The resolution is used. Okay, so for the layout, because those two one will always be the same size as the crop use fraction value, as that's half of the picture, we are not gonna set a custom resolution. We're gonna say use input, and we're gonna say scale resolution, so we get the same effect even though we have less parameter used, so we can remove this info chop that is not needed anymore. So that's one more less node. So here we have another LFO with another null which is used nowhere, I guess, so we're gonna remove it. So here we have actually a mirror effect, which is the mirror angle we've set up right here. So we have some kind of two mirrors effect, which is a really nice effect and works really well. This switch is just for activating the effect, and there's no blend because it's just a toggle, so there's no need to enable a blend for it. There is our out, so there's already no null between the switch and the out, so that's nice. This is the constant we're gonna use. This constant is used only one time, and it's this, so I'm just gonna put it directly right there and remove those two one, because here it's explicit what's happening right here. Here and here. Okay, so here's the extent is a repeat, here the extent is a mirror. What I'm wondering is, would it be possible to have it be more efficient? Because here we have 0.09 total CPU plus GPU. Here we have 0.12 CPU plus GPU as well. You can actually remove this one, put it back here, and it's actually doing the same thing. This way we're able to remove one node. And we're done, and we have removed a lot of unused nodes right here. So here I kind of want to remove those now because they're just cluttering space. I don't see them adding a real value to this system, so I'm just gonna cut this node, delete this one, and update the node, so the references are done again. And we're gonna do the same thing here. Because yes, of course, if you want to edit the effect and add something else between the LFO and the mirror, you'll have to re-add those null I just removed. But I think for this case, they're not useful because they're just taking more space than what is acceptable. So in this case, those nulls were just cluttering the user space. Here we have this mirror effect cleaned up, which is pretty nice. Saved, and let's go to the next effect, which is named radioactive or purple green, depending on where you look. I'm gonna go with radioactive for this one. Oopsie. So what's happening here? Not a lot, just a lookup and a mono. Okay, so fine, efficient, and great. This lookup is expecting in its second input a lookup table or any other top. But here we're just outputting a simple gradient. The resolution of this image is directly linked to the color quality you'll get on the lookup. Because it's a simple ramp going from left to right, each column has the same color up to top. So I'm just gonna reduce its height to 1 pixel because I don't need to have 256 times the same color on the same column, just one time is enough. And you can see that the lookup hasn't changed. And I'm gonna increase the X resolution so we get a better color definition in the lookup. So I'm gonna go from 256 to like 1080. I don't see a lot of difference here in the viewer, so I guess that's good. So here we have the switch to go from one type to the other. It's using a simple argument. This null is not necessary, just the out. And that's another effect we've taken care of. Wonderful. Next effect is called hue rotation. Again, not a lot. What it's doing is just having an HSV adjust. The only thing we're gonna change is that we're using a simple constant to get the hue rotation from our parameters. Instead of going for a constant, we're just gonna put it directly here so we can remove this node and have a more straightforward network for this effect. This one's done, let's go to the next one. Okay, fluo edge. Yes, few things happening here. We have here a color that I can adjust using a knob, and with this slider I get to adjust the edges. So this edge value is only used here to activate or deactivate the presence of the edge. So we're gonna see how this is working and see what we can do with it. So first we have this edge here, and with a matte we are multiplying the values in order to get them more white. Is there any way for us to do most of the work here, in here? We're gonna adjust the strength, and we're already getting something similar. So the strength was 0.1, I'm gonna put it to 2, which gives me this really strong effect. I'm gonna adjust it. Yep, 1.5 seems fine, so I can remove this. Here I have a blur, small blur, doesn't do a lot, but it's still a blur. This comp is using the value from my HSV just here. We're gonna adjust them, put them here. Here we're gonna inverse those two, say we want input 1 to be the reference, swap operation, and there we are, we got the color on our borders. Here we have levels that increase the brightness of our element. I have a null here I'm gonna remove. I have this composition here that just adds a border back on the source video. So again, same thing, up, swap, and we're using the first input. This way the network's links doesn't cross. So this cross is doing the switch if the effect is activated or deactivated, just like before on the effect. So we're just gonna change its type. So we're gonna get the effect, and we are gonna change the top type to switch, which is here, blend, and we're gonna do this. Okay, so this reference is weird because we're using an absolute path to get the null, which is here. And if we look at what's happening here, the edge is just a reference to the parent parameter. So we're just gonna copy this and put it directly here so we can remove 1, 2 nodes and this value here. Okay, so now for the color. We get the channel color, which come from the parent parameters and is mapped to a knob right here. And we want it to go from -360 to 0. In the math here, we're using a range, great. And I'm gonna remove this null to declutter the space, and instead of having a select right there, I'm just gonna remove this select as we only have one channel in now. I'm just gonna select those one, bring it closer to where they are used, which is right there. And here it is color, so here I'm gonna constant, and here I'm gonna rename it in full caps color, Control C, and here we are referencing the node color and the first channels. Okay, so this works again, doing the same thing as before. We just have relice operators in this network. So let's see this sorting effect, or effect sorting, based on what it's being written under it. Okay, so we're gonna get the videos a bit bigger to see what's happening. Okay, so I'm activating this effect using a slider which has those displaced line here. We're gonna change video. This is nice. Okay, so here we have a ramp. Feeds a noise. So the noise resolution is set by default to the same as the video. So I'm gonna do a reference for this because I don't like having it hard written on it. So I'm just gonna select the in1.wadth and up. So here I have a transform that doesn't do anything except a mirror, but what happens if I remove it? Not a lot actually, so we're gonna remove this one, because even though it's not used, this transform is actually using like more than 0.2 millisecond of GPU time. It's not a lot, but when you remember that for 60 FPS you have to be below 16.6 milliseconds, you realize that it's already a lot. So we're gonna remove this one. So we have the displays here. We have a null and an out. Let's remove the null. We're just gonna put everything back to the origin. Yep, okay. So this effect has been done. We have a last effect, which is called displace. Okay, for this one, we're gonna see what's happening. So We first start by getting the row which goes from left to right, half the picture in the middle. Why not? Here we have a math who does nothing. Let's remove it. Yeah, here we have a merge where we take a bit which takes the ramp, the sign, the bit itself, and the ramp bit. There's separated in 3 multiples. This nulls can be removed. We have a null here that I'm gonna keep. So we have a chop 2 which take an RGBA. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so those two output exactly the same thing in exactly the same resolution. So we're gonna remove one of them because this one is using more than 0.3 milliseconds. This one is using actually the same. So I'm gonna remove one of the two and just have it go there. Here we have a level, we have a transform. Okay, we'll just keep it here with its LFO. That's just the name. Here we have a displace that takes what we've just done with the input video. We have this switch that acts as a toggle for are we displaying the effect or not. We have the null art, removing the null. This switch is just a displays value which is controlled by a slider, and it adds this really nice effect when it's activated. We're gonna hide all of those, save, let's go back. So we have this null art, same here. So we have paused all our effects. We've removed useless elements. So here there's an effect called Larsen that's not being used. We're not gonna touch it. There's a time slice here, but I'm not gonna touch it. I'm just gonna remove it from the field and put it back here. Disconnect. So here we are. We have paused all the effects available in this VJing set. FPS are still 60, just like at the beginning. They just seem to be a bit more stable, which is fine. We still have this FPS drop when we're changing the video, but as we said, we're gonna take a look at this later. For now, we're just gonna, so those are unused. So what I'm gonna do now is just to add a bit of more clarity, I'm gonna add some color. So I have a few textures here on the side. So I'm gonna take this one, which is like the color palette, but with a bit more options and the default nodes. So all of this, which are video effect, are gonna become purple, just like a top. Okay, right there. So this who holds all our parent parameters and this constant here. I'm gonna get the elements by hand instead of taking them this way. So that would be me.par.next and prev. So incrementing next, and here we're gonna put prev. Okay, and if I press the button, it still works the exact same way, which is fine. I'm gonna remove that. So we remove kind of a lot of nodes actually, which is nice. So this is called source, but I'm gonna rename it source selector because that's what it's doing. Here, this null is gonna be renamed source singular, and I'm gonna color it again and have it a bit bigger so we understand what's happening in this one and its role in the whole thing. So this effect is not used, so I'm gonna remove it, put it at the end of the filter so we know it's waiting to be added and improved. So here we have our source selector. I'm gonna color it to give it that color like that, so we understand that we're working with data in this one. We're gonna keep this on the side because they only apply when we're working on it, and I'm gonna deactivate them. We're gonna take a look at the performances of the project. So for this, I'm gonna open the performance monitor, which is Alt-Y, and do an analyze. So here we are, 14.41 milliseconds. That's less than 16.6. which is great because we are able to reach 60 FPS, and we're gonna get to see what's using a lot of resources. So there's this movie filing, who of course is using resources because it's the only node that's doing disk read, and disk read are costly in terms of performances. We're kinda good actually. So for now I'm gonna keep it as is. Here I'm gonna rename it main, because that's where everything is happening. Here is gonna be the input folder. Here we have our main out. I don't want this null. This window is redundant with the perform window, so I'm gonna remove it. I'm gonna save. What happens if I press F1. Okay, so perform mode was set to this window. I'm gonna correct the perform mode to use the /perform window. This section of the network should be just for making effects and editing the videos. So recording part will be brought back one level up. So I'm just gonna add an out instead, so we can get the view here. I'm gonna go back one level, and I'm gonna put the movie file out here. So this way, everything that's not related to doing the effect is one level up. So this way, the perform window, which is selecting the project one, which itself is displaying the out one we just added, is displayed. We're gonna do a fill best to prevent any deformation. For the part about just the effect, I think we're good. We've added a bit of clarity here by renaming the channels, but it's still quite a mess. But I think we'll keep this for another time. And the source selection, which introduced a lot of FPS drops when switching inputs, is gonna be as well for another time. Because for now we've seen quite a lot of techniques of how to reduce the number of nodes used and what kind of information you have to be looking for when you want to improve the performances of your application. So I think that's it for now. We'll see the rest another time. Thank you all for listening, and I hope these videos have been helpful. If you have any question and comment, please feel free to send them to me. I'll be happy to respond to them and improve the future videos. Bye everyone.